Over the last couple weeks, the world's attention, in this country at least, has been paid to Ferguson, Missouri, where riots have been going on and protests have been going on ever since an 18-year-old unarmed black man was shot in the street and killed. Some people have said this is excessive brutality by law enforcement and an example of it ongoing. Other people say this was law enforcement reacting to a dangerous situation and doing what they had to do in order to get out of the situation and home to their family. Ultimately, I don't know what happened there. I wasn't there, and neither were you, but we'll have to see what transpires through the course of the next few weeks, the investigation, and if there is ever any charges or a trial. But I really want to bring us back to the beginning of how this started. On that fateful Saturday, there was a shooting that afternoon. Michael Brown was killed, and his body was lying in the street. Shortly after his body was removed from the street, there was a memorial made in that street on that same Saturday. A lot of people began gathering around that memorial, mourning, being sad as anybody would at the loss of an 18-year-old, regardless of really what the circumstances were around it, especially for the friends and family that live in that neighborhood. Now, a lot of people began to gather, anger began to mount, rumors started to go around about the circumstances around the shooting, whether they are true or not, or whether part of it is true and part of it is not. But then the flame was ignited, literally and figuratively, by a single event. And it was an event that really was unrelated to this whole incident. What basically happened is during the course of this morning on that Saturday evening, there was somebody that had a barbecue in the neighborhood and threw their hot ash into a garbage can, which started that garbage receptacle on fire and the garbage dumpster on fire. Law enforcement, along with firefighters, entered the area in order to put that dumpster and garbage out. And as they entered the neighborhood, people saw the law enforcement coming in, saw them near the fire trucks, and that's when the crowd began to turn hostile. And that's where that first night of rioting started. And after that, rioting on that first night, many people have attempted to make peaceful protests. However, people have come from all over the area for reasons, who knows why, and have been agitators, outsiders, but there are also people there too that have been violent. It's a very bad situation. Now, we'll have to see how the case actually moves forward and what actually happens here. But a lot of people have called this a movement for whatever reason. And maybe as a white person, I don't understand the saying behind this movement. To me, I don't see a movement. I see a very disorganized group of people that are angry. The anger is very obvious, but it's very difficult maybe as a white person to really understand how this anger comes about, how this anger is so high. Yes, they talk about police brutality. Yes, they talk about crime rates. But when you look at statistics from the crime rates, when you look at statistics from the FBI office, crime happens to follow impoverished areas. And these African-American areas, if they are more impoverished than other areas, have a tendency to have higher crime rate. When you look at the homicide rate from the FBI's own data, it shows that basically white people commit crimes against white people most often, especially homicide. 3,128 Caucasians were killed by homicide in 2012. 2,614 were killed by another white person. 2,648 African Americans were killed in 2012 in homicide. 2,412 of those were killed by other black men. Crime has a tendency to actually follow itself and its own ethnic groups. But this is more about police brutality potentially than against the African American community. Maybe that's where the anger comes out. And when you see the police tactics and the military gear and everything like that, maybe that just exacerbates the rumor. But the thing that really strikes me about this is I'm 32 years old. I was grown up taught to be colorblind, taught that you judge people by the content of their character. And as I've gotten older, I realize that there's a large section in America, especially driven by the media, by people like Al Sharpton, by people on both the left and right, that like this divide in ethnic groups, that likes this racial tension, because it makes headlines and makes big news. I thought we had passed a certain point by electing an African-American president who, like many members of my family, is multiracial. But I know that being multiracial in this society means you're looked at as black or African American. Now, the truth is, as white people will probably never completely understand exactly where this anger and rage comes from. But African American people need to understand this. When we see the riots in the streets and the reaction, we don't understand that reaction either. And I don't think the violence and what we've seen nightly helps to heal racial tension. If anything, it divides it. But if it opens up a conversation, maybe it'll be worth it. But I just wish people would wait to judge before actually convicting this officer publicly, because we don't know what happened, and it's really hard for me to believe that an officer of the law, sworn to uphold it, would gun down anybody for no reason.